Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome back from break. I hope you had a restful holiday break. I know you guys don't all work in education, so maybe you didn't have 2 weeks off, but I still hope you took some time to rest and reflect and recharge. Happy New Year to everyone. So I'm excited to be back and excited to spend my Wednesday mornings with all of you. So this morning, what we're talking about, Miss Gunter is here with us, and we're doing the topic. We actually do this topic every year, the first week of January, and it's finding your spark. Where, when we start a new year, I don't know how many of you do New Year's resolutions. I always say I'm not going to, but then I always kind of like, well, I'm going to like make this change or do this. So this is it just seems like a good time of year to talk about reflecting about what makes us happy and what makes us passionate and incorporating those things into our life. And as always, we talk about a lot of the stuff in these parent talks, as things that can help us personally, but then we model this behavior for our kids. So when we do this for ourselves, our kids see that and then hopefully learn from our example. So Ms. Gunter, what do you have for us today?
Yes, it was definitely slow to warm up this week. It took me a couple of days to kind of get into the swing of things, but I feel like I'm finally there. So yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Finding your spark, excuse me, and when I call it a spark, is like your passion, is something that I picked up in an internship some years ago when I was in grad school. And the idea of this is that we all are passionate about something. And it doesn't necessarily have to end up being our career. If it is, that's fantastic. But if it's not, that's okay. And just like Miss Davis said, I like to start by talking about ourselves, because as parents, we tend to not focus on ourselves. We tend to, spend a lot of our energy on our families and then it kind of neglect our own needs. And so I think it's important to model the behavior of having a passion, developing your passion, spending time with your passion. And then in doing so, showing our kids that it's great to have something for yourself. It's easy to get sucked up into helping other people. And, we tend to just, again, neglect our own needs. So I want to talk a little bit about passion. And it's interesting being older now and reflecting back when I was younger about what I was actually passionate about. I didn't realize it. I love people. I love talking to people. I love talking to strangers. My parents said I was chatty, I would get in trouble in school for talking to people. My husband thinks I'm like the nosiest person in the whole world. He doesn't understand how when I'm in the grocery store, I end up talking to some stranger about their divorce and their parenting and all these things. And he assumes I know them, but I don't. We just got to know each other in that moment. I love that. I love knowing, what makes people feel alive, what makes them upset, what makes them happy, what drives them, where they came from, why they are the way they are, who inspired them when they were growing up. I just want to know. So I ask questions and, I always have to apologize. I'm so sorry if I'm crossing a boundary. I just want to know, and it works for me because it's what I do. But that's me, right? And so my husband and I have this kind of joke of his job. He's a business guy. I couldn't even tell you exactly what he does, but I know by listening to his calls that it sounds so boring and horrible. I could not do that all day. It sounds awful. And then when I come home talking about my job, he's like, how on earth do you deal with people crying? It's so annoying to me. I don't want to know what's going on with people. You ask questions that I would just steer away from. And so we know that we have our own thing. We have our own passions. My kids think it's annoying that I ask them questions all the time. They prefer my husband just will ask them things when it's super necessary, but I just want to know. So where does our passion come from? And I think what you said, Miss Davis, it's modeled to us. Sometimes I think it's just innate. I really, truly feel I say this about social workers all the time. I think we're born being social workers and then school just kind of fine tunes everything around that. So for me, it's always been people. I've always been friends with the underdog. I cannot tell you how many times in my life I went to a birthday party where I was the only guest. It's just what I did and who I was. passion is a result. It's an energy. It's the feeling you have when you're so engaged in something that you would do it for free or that you would lose track of time. Again, it doesn't have to be your career, but it can be. When I was a stay-at-home mom, I was completely consumed by being a mom. When you're raising young kids, it's like you're at the mercy of your family. You're not doing anything for yourself. As I've gotten older and my kids have gotten a little bit more independent, I'm finding myself with more time to pursue the things that I want. And so you might be somebody who has your own thing right now, but you might be somebody who's kind of lost that along the way. People ask you like what you're passionate about. How many of us have said like, oh, my family, which is great because I'm passionate about my family too. But at some point, as we're learning, we're going to get to that empty nest stage. And if that's all we're passionate about, we're kind of left with nothing. I know Miss Davis and I have both experienced kids moving out of the house and what that feels like. And it kind of leaves a hole in your heart for a while. But I know for myself that if I didn't have other things going on, it would have been a lot more painful. So just reflecting on your own life, are you doing things that are just for yourself? The question that I ask kids when we're trying to get to know what their passion is, what could you do all day for free? What would you get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to do? So I'll let you answer that, Jenny.
Well, I get up at 4 a.m. every morning to exercise. I wouldn't say that's a passion though it is something that I like really have, it's become a big part of my life. It's how I manage my stress. It's become a very necessary part. I injured myself a couple of weeks ago while on vacation. And so I haven't been able to, I'm getting slowly back into it, but I haven't been able to like do what I normally do. And it's painful. It's hard for me. But I wouldn't say that's my passion. I would like thinking about this, something that I just love to do, and I don't do it all of the time. I certainly get really busy and I'm like, let's order takeout, but I love to cook. I do. I love, cooking and making meals and making fancy desserts and like experimenting with stuff. I love doing that. It's fun for me. It's not something that I would ever consider doing as a career. Mm-hmm. I do it just for me. And I think, this whole, how this like bleeds down to our kids. I was thinking about this and like, because my kids have grown up with me cooking, and I don't want to brag, but I'm a pretty good cook. Like, I'm pretty good at it. My daughter has made comments to me that like growing up and she would go to friends' houses, she hated eating at other people's houses because the food wasn't good. And she's like so used to good food that she can't handle like having bad food. And so I don't know if she's actually developed a passion for cooking, but I think at some point she's going to, because she's going to have to learn that if she wants to eat that way, she's going to have to learn how to do it. But that is something that I learned from my parents, because both my parents were good cooks, and that I grew up. And it was actually when I went away to college and I was living on my own that I learned from my parents having that be part of your life. I don't know if I really learned techniques and recipes from them. Somewhat I did, but I just, because it was something that I was into, I remember like when I was in college, and you had time in between classes, I used to watch, this is when the Food Network first started. And like, actually, I watched, because you could watch cooking shows on PBS, and I got that in my dorm room. And so I just used to watch cooking shows, and I loved it. And so that's how I actually learned a lot of what I know now.
That's awesome. When you're talking about cooking and like my disdain for like having to think of what to cook every day, it's not my thing. But I'm thinking now that you're talking about modeling, I remember my mom coming home from work, she'd have bags of groceries, she would be exhausted, and she would like throw them on the counter. And that process of making us dinner looked like an obligation. It didn't look like a passion. And that's kind of how I've been in regards to cooking. Like I cook because my family has to eat, but not because I'm like excited about it. And so I wonder if that had been modeled a little bit differently, if that would have been, something different for me. Literally, I'm like, I have to feed the kids. What am I going to feed them? And every day it's like a thing. But I wonder if that's, because you were modeled that was helpful. So that's good, because it's like, that's what, our kids are seeing. Like, what are they seeing from us right now? How fun does it look to be an adult to them? um, I was a kind of a late bloomer. So I went to college in my 30s, and I think I was a little more mature than a lot of my classmates at that time. But one of the things that I did is I did an internship at one of our high schools. And actually, I did 3 internships over the course of my degree, and they were all unpaid. So now our interns get paid, but back then they were unpaid. And I remember being there, and teenagers were like talking to me about their lives. They were sharing these deep, dark secrets. They trusted me with their lives, and I remember thinking one day, I cannot believe I'm going to get paid to do this, because I could do this all day, every single day. And to this day, I come to work and I meet with kids all day long, and I get a paycheck at the end of the month. And it is like the wildest thing to me, because I literally would still want to come here if you stop paying me. Like I love it. And I've seen people, my husband earlier in his career, he was not where he was supposed to be, and he was miserable. He would come home from work and just complain. It was miserable. And that energy was very like heavy in the house. And seeing him, his passions kind of align with what he does now, like how much easier it is to think about the fact that I have like 20 more years to work, right? Like those kind of things. And so having that align with like what I do, I think is such a gift for me. Like I can't complain. I want us to take a moment and think about when we were teenagers. Might be longer for some of us, longer ago for me. Gosh. And what was your passion then? And sorry, I'm charging my laptop. And is it the same thing now? Like, what was it back then? What motivated you? What drove you? What did you love? What did you get up for? What was that for you? And you can say it out loud. You can throw it in the chat. If anybody wants to share, what was that for you when you were a teenager? The thing that got you the most excited? And it doesn't have to be something that's like so honorable and great. Literally, it could be, I loved going outside and playing jump rope with my friends. Like whatever it was, what was that for you when you were a teenager?
I think for me, I was a typical teenager. I loved hanging out with my friends. Like I loved talking to them on the phone, which actually makes me laugh now because kids don't talk on the phone these days. They text each other, but like I would like spend hours talking on the phones, and I would hang up with one friend and like call another, and like just hours. I don't know how I got anything done because I spent my whole life on the phone. But it was actually hanging out with friends that I realized that I wanted to be a teacher. Because I remember it, and I do distinctly remember this one incident that we were studying for finals, and I was helping my friend study for her history final, and I was explaining to her and like basically teaching her US history and like explaining it to her. And she was like, "Oh wow, you like explained that so well." And I was like, "Yeah, I did. Like that's what I wanted to do for my life." I kind of had in my mind that maybe I wanted to be a teacher. Like if you'd asked me like, what do you want to be for your career? I would have probably said teacher, but that's when I was like, oh, I want to teach history, and like kind of really solidified for me. That's what I wanted to do. I never actually, in no point in my early career would have imagined that I would be a principal. Like it was like never something that I aspired to. I wanted to be a teacher. Becoming a principal was actually a little bit more of an accident, but these things happen.
I love it. When I think back about high school, of course, it was like hanging out with my friends, but I loved playing sports. I played volleyball, basketball, softball. I was, conditioning all year long, like the whole thing. And it motivated me to live a healthier lifestyle, and motivated me to keep my grades up because I didn't want to get kicked off of a team. I remember staying at school till really late, like 6:30, 7 at practice, and not even like blinking. Like it was just what I did. I loved it so much. And it makes me think about my spark champion. And when I say spark champion, it's like the person who supported me regardless of what. And my dad is like the sweetest guy in the whole world. And he showed up at every game. He would leave work early, come to my softball games, my practices. He would bring our whole team cut up oranges to practice, like just so sweet. And he just knew that it was so important to me, and he would show up. Back then it was super embarrassing for me that my dad showed up and was like filming us or whatever. But, in hindsight, it's like he knew it was so important to me. Like, do I think he thought I was going to grow up and be a professional athlete? Probably not. Even when I first started and I was sitting on the bench, he was still there. I would sit on the basketball bench the whole time, and my dad was just there and just like super excited to be there. He knew how much it meant to me and never complained. We went to a small private school. And so the teams that we would play were all over the Bay Area. We would drive to like Antioch. We'd drive down to like San Luis Obispo. My dad never complained. Like, he just was there. And it could have been so different if my dad was like, I know that she's not going to be an athlete anyway, so why are we wasting our time? We had to buy, we didn't have a lot of money then. And we had to buy basketball shoes every year and, all the equipment that we need. And my parents did everything that they could to make that happen for me. And that was so meaningful. And just knowing that, like, as a teenager, your passions change, right? That's not really what I do anymore. But it was so important for me at the time. And so I think about my own kids, and sometimes it's really hard to meet them where they're at, and like, what is their passion right now, and how meaningful is it, and how much energy do I want to put into it. But my dad always comes to my mind of like, it didn't matter. It could have been the silliest thing, and my dad still would have been there. That was super impactful for me. So again, for all of us, like, what was it as a teenager for us? And then who were those people that were supportive for us? It doesn't just have to be a parent. It could be a teacher. It could be someone, that just, was a big support person for us. And then the next question is like, hey, whatever you decided was your passion as a teenager, is it still your passion now? No. Jeannie, same passion?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think, I still enjoy obviously hanging out with friends and like that sort of thing. I don't do it the way I used to do it, but I think that's like, even when you talk about like work and the relationships I make through work are so important to me. Like, you spend a lot of time with the people that you work with, and so it's really important for me to enjoy those people on a personal level, and to laugh a lot at work, because in education, some of the things aren't laughing matters, and some things are really hard, and so having people that you can close the door and just laugh until you cry, like, that is invaluable to me. And so I consider myself very lucky to have that.
I love that. So for all of us that are here, just again, thinking about our passions, and maybe we don't know what they are, maybe it's gotten lost, or maybe it hasn't just been a priority for you. And so one of the activities I want to do, there's 7 questions, and I'm going to ask them, and then you just reflect to yourself. And throw out an answer, please do throw it in the chat or speak out. But these are questions that are going to help us figure out what exactly is our passion. What themes can we find in these questions that are going to help us, kind of grow on that path to find what it is that we love. And again, they're going to evolve. They've changed from sports for me to just like people, and I can play card games with friends for hours, like all night long. Like, for me, that is so much fun. I can go out into nature, just hanging out with the family, just all the things for me that are just so meaningful, like things I could do all weekend long, and the time passes really quickly. So the first question is, and you can be as thoughtful or descriptive as you want, but what do I most often give to others? I'll let you read that, Jeannie.
So I grew up with lots of seniors around. I'm assuming you mean senior citizens and not seniors in high school. And I always felt more comfortable sitting and listening to their stories. I think that was my calling, and I'm fortunate to have a career in senior care, which is awesome. good for you, because as somebody who's
It's a
had
gift.
a lot of senior care over the past year, I commend you because that is very needed.
Thank you for your work. Giving of your time. Huge, biggest gift. What is it that you most often give others? Maybe it's baked goods. Maybe you make people laugh. Maybe you cheer people up. What is it from your perspective that you give to other people? I'm thinking about this one. My friends all kind of make fun of me because they say that I'm the person that would forget to respond to my texts for 8 months. But when they're in crisis, I would be there at 3 o'clock in the morning with pizza. So the person for them that they know they can count on when they're in crisis. Maybe my text responses aren't that great, but I like knowing that they feel secure in if there's something happening, they can call me and they know I'm going to be there. And I think sometimes I make my friends laugh. So
Okay, so usually showing people I care in a way they like, but usually only when I take care of myself enough first, which is so true. And then
yeah.
Vincent's mentorship and tech support. Very nice.
Oh, huge. This one says making people feel they are heard and cared for. So validating. So that's the first question. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe people when people ask, I think sometimes like practical advice. I can think about my daughter and like when she comes to me like with stuff. I think like it's like practical advice, like be real, like don't like not pie in the sky and like, but like this is because I'm very much a realist, and so I look at like, okay, what's the most likely thing that's going to happen and how do we deal with that?
That's good. We need that. And I love that everybody brings something so different because we need so many different things. If we were all the same type of friend that offered the same thing and we all just brought big goods to everybody, like not super helpful. But yeah, making people feel heard and cared for and supporting them with whatever it is that's our gift or our talent or our skill or our passion. The second question is, what do I have the most fun doing? And so I want you to kind of remember your answers to each of these questions because we're going to kind of pull them together at the end and develop like a theme, if you will. So what do I have the most fun doing? This question makes me so sad for tons of my students because I ask them all the time, what do you do for fun? What's fun for you? And they like blink at me like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what do you do that's not school related, that's just for you that you have a wonderful time doing? And they're like, say again. So important to have fun. School is important, education is important, but if you're not balanced and enjoying something in your life, it's going to be really tough for you. So what is it for you that you have the most fun doing? Again, for me, it's hanging out with my friends. Yeah, spending time playing games, watching Jeopardy, watching movies, reading. I have fun doing that. So for everybody else, what do you have the most fun doing? I can spend hours at Target and Marshall's. Hours. I love it. It's so fun. I don't have to buy anything. It's just fun. It's a question we don't ask ourselves often. When's the last time you said, what am I going to do today that's fun for me? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably not.
I mean, I like if I were to like have like just a day where I could do whatever I want, I honestly would probably like just like I'm gonna lay in bed, I'm gonna read a book, a really good book. Like that to me is just bliss. Love it.
Yeah.
So we've got watching cooking and fitness videos on YouTube and outdoor activities such as hiking, biking, walking in nature. But better is reading a motivational book.
It's a good one. Yeah. It's funny how our fun things change as we age. Like all these like motivational books and video, like our kids would be like, what? But yeah, I love it.
And it's also funny how they don't change. I recently, right before Christmas, reconnected with a high school friend of mine who I actually have really, like, I think the last time I saw her was my freshman year of college. So it's been 30 years. And so she was talking, and she was an exchange student that we had that lived with us and went to high school. And so she like saw me and like all of my different, more than just a friend. She like actually lived with us. And she was telling, she's like, oh yeah, you would always just go to your room and read a book. And I'm like, oh wow, I'm still the same.
That's awesome. That's true. That's true. There are some that are still the same. I think about like, so this is so dumb. I don't know if I'm going to share it, but lately I've been obsessed with watching like wildlife videos on TikTok, right? And so I've been watching about and learning about hippos. They are the most fascinating creatures in the entire world. Literally Google them. They're like amazing. And I'm like, my husband's so annoyed. I'm in bed like laughing and just like, it's like midnight. He's like, what are you doing? Like for me, it was so fun. I'm like learning something. It's so interesting. It's a video. If you're not on TikTok, good. It's a time suck. Like, don't do it. I try to like discourage the kids from being on it so much, but I get it because it's like mindless and kind of fun, and you are like learning stuff. And so for me, that's actually been kind of fun. Like, I know when I'm stressed, I'll kind of take a time out and do something silly like that. But what is it for you? What's fun? The third question is, it's a little different than the first one. What do others look to me for? So remember, the first one was, what do I often give to others? It doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing. What do others look to me for? This might be different than the first question. And it also could be different at work than it is at home, right? At work, people ask me for advice. At home, people don't ask me for advice. They ask me for food and money. So what is it that people look to you for? Is it advice? Is it a ride? And then whatever that is that something you enjoy giving?
Wow. I would say at home, people ask me for, I'm going to say comfort, like food, money, but like really what they want is like comfort, right?
Good.
But at work, especially because like this is my job, but like they want, when people come to me, it's because they have a problem and they want me to solve their problem. Yeah. And I don't like that aspect of my job because sometimes I can't solve their problem and I hate that. Like I want to, like my personality is I'm a fixer. I want to fix everything. And sometimes you just can't. And that sucks.
It's true. At home, it is food, definitely. Yes. I think that's something we share in our work, is that people come to us with problems. It's like I don't really get knocks on the door to tell me something good usually. I don't know about you. You probably don't either. So that's tough. So
usually I do, and that's amazing when that happens.
Oh, I know, it's great, right? So what is it that others are looking to you for? The next question, so remember, it was, what do I give most often to others? What do I have the most fun doing? What do others look to for me? At work, clients just call because they probably don't have anyone to speak to. So they find you, they track you down to be a listener. Yeah, people want to be heard. Sure. You guys are going to like this next question because it's going to require some good self-esteem. What am I most often complimented on? Very easy to talk about positive characteristics of our friends and family, but it's a little bit different when we're talking about ourselves. Because when I say like, oh, people compliment me on this, it sounds like, oh my gosh, I don't want to feel like vain or whatever. But I think it's important to be able to do that. And then think about like, how do you respond when you're complimented? So what am I most often complimented on? I'm going to put you on the spot, Jenny.
At work, probably communication, being very efficient. Yeah. Being, actually, I got a compliment over the summer from a fellow principal, and he's like, Jenny, when you talk, like, I'm always like, oh yeah, like that's the way it has to be. Like, you're just very like self-assured, and like, that's like, like every time you talk, I'm like reassured. I'm like, oh, okay, it's gonna be fine. And I'm like, oh,
Great
that's
compliment. That's a great compliment.
I think in my personal life, I'm complimented a lot on my cooking. So
Good one. I'm putting all you on the spot. I haven't even thought about this question. I'm like, I don't know, actually. I was hoping you all would be putting things in the chat so I could not talk about myself. So what am I most complimented on? I think a lot of time people tell me that they feel like heard or validated. And that people feel like I can be like warm and inviting when I want to be. So I feel like I'm approachable. And people have said that, like, oh, I'm so glad I could tell you this because it was hard for me to tell anybody else. So I take that as a compliment.
you are somebody that is very good at listening and making somebody feel better. And then also your decorating skills.
That's fun.
By our wellness center, you should on, and it's amazing.
Thank you. That's that was a fun space to decorate. And then, like, when was the last time you were complimented? Well, right now, thanks, Ginny. Yeah. When was the last time you were complimented? And nobody in the chat has put what they're complimented on, so I'm a little worried. Are you not getting complimented? Is it hard to talk about the things that you might be good at? Maybe. The next question is, let's see. To some people, I appear confident, but many times I don't feel that way on the inside. It does help me feel more confident when I meditate. I learned to say thank you and accept. Soul of the family. My husband tells me this all the time. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful compliment. Soul of the family. Love it. So this can all kind of tie in together, but where do I lose all track of time? Besides TikTok hippo videos, I would say hanging out with my friends. Yeah. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 4 hours.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I will lose a ton of time just looking at stuff on my phone where I'm like, like I've been doing that for 30 minutes and I'm like, how is that possible?
Yes. Some days at work, I'm like on a roll. I've got like, I'll see like 7 kids in one day, like back to back. And I don't, and it's cool because we're like having these, really deep and good conversations. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 7th period. Whoa. Like, so for me, that's like, I've never been at work looking at the clock, like maybe on Monday a little bit, looking at the clock, like waiting for time to pass. I feel like I can get lost in what I do, which I think is really awesome. So where do you lose all track of time? And then this question here is, what do the people closest to me say my passions are? Might be different than what, like, does that actually align with what you think? Like, people might think my passion is, I would be worried that people would say, oh, I think your passion is shopping, because it's not. But maybe that's something that I'm doing when they call me every time. So what would you say that your people would say is your passion?
I think my kids would probably say exercise, and it's not, I don't hate it, but it's not a passion.
Yeah.
I don't, and maybe I haven't like explained to them why I exercise so much. Like for me, and maybe more what I'm passionate about is I'm actually pretty passionate about self-care. And it is like how I take care of myself and how I manage my stress and my overall health, because just especially with having aging parents and my mom and all her health problems and seeing like what a lifetime of being unhealthy has done to her, I refuse.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it happen to me. So I think they think it's more about exercise and it's more about self-care.
Yeah, that's good. Good to differentiate that. Yeah, it's like not my passion. It's like, I love getting my nails done, but I'm not like passionate about it in any way, I would think my kids would say, I don't know. My kids go here, and so sometimes they'll be trying to leave after school, but I'm like staying here with the kid, like talking to them. And I don't know if that my kids get jealous, but they will say things like, your work's more important than us, or you love your kids more than you love it, like those kind of little comments. And so I would think they might say that my job is my passion. It is one of my passions for sure, but I don't think what they would think about me would be in alignment. I'm going to ask them tonight, see what they say. Ask your kids tonight, Jamie, see what they say and tell me tomorrow. So for all you, like, what would your closest people say? And does it actually align with who you are and what you really are passionate about? There's one more question
would say too.
What's that?
Curious what my husband would say.
Ooh, I'm going to write myself a note to make sure I ask them. My husband would probably say something dramatic like anything but me.
So in the chat says, yes, self-care for me as well. All our relationships improve when we are happy and healthy ourselves. I totally agree. And it is that whole, like, I just, was on a plane the other day. And so, they do the whole, like, the face mask thing, when like you have to put it on yourself first and then your kid, but that is so true. Like, you've got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anybody else. I'm connected with myself when with infants and elderly, and my dog and my family would agree.
I love that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. This last question, I was actually watching our video for I'm like, what did I say last year? It's what ideas, things, places, or people am I the most inspired by? And I'm thinking about, like, when I was growing up, I was thinking about like people now. And my person, which I thought was kind of silly, is like, I grew up in the 80s, so I watched talk shows all the time. I was so jealous of Oprah. She interviewed the coolest people. She asked the hardest questions. She legitimately looked like she was super engaged in their conversations. And I think that was really cool. And so I think I don't know, I wouldn't say like she inspired me, but like watching her ask people questions that nobody else could ask and them trusting her with that was so cool to me. Like, it sounds so silly, but it was like, I love talking to people and I love that people trusted her. It was like a big deal. She was like truly engaged, whether it was somebody that she agreed with or not. It was like she was legitimately like listening and being present, and she was like an active listener. Like, I loved that. I thought that was so cool. And then she got paid for it. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Would I say the same thing, like she's my person now? Probably not. I'm thinking about people who I'm inspired by. And I think for me, it's people who are very selfless, like people who, take care of themselves, but also give of themselves. Because, our world is like so fast paced and it's all about like what we need and all these things. And so when I see people who are really, just like give of themselves to others, like I'm inspired by that, because I know for me, like I could always do better. Like I always want to do better with something. So yeah, that's my super cheesy 80s, 90s response is Oprah. What about you? Who inspires you? Who inspired you then? Who inspires you now? I love Oprah. I really admire her communication skills. There's a genuine way of connecting to people that has helped people trust her. I agree. Thank you for validating that.
I'm trying to think.
And it could be somebody too. It doesn't have to be like a famous person, but
I'm trying to think of somebody who inspired me when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to think about that. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I just turned my ringer off. Sorry. But now, I mean, I admire and more inspired by people that, I guess I'm always inspired by women who are mothers and also working full time. Because it's such a struggle. And so I always look to other women that are doing it, and like, I am like not remembering how to turn off my
You're popular today.
How do you do the do not disturb? There it is. Sorry, I was gone for 2 weeks and I forgot how to use my phone. So I just remembered how to turn the ringer off and like pressing wrong buttons. So I would say, like I was saying, like people that, women that have families that are also working full times and like seem to be managing it. And again, doing the self-care, because I am inspired by people that, do put themselves first, that don't, I'm, because I see, a lot of times women that they're like up to, there's this person that both Yvonne and I know, and you may have seen this post by her before Christmas, and she was up until like 3 o'clock in the morning, like finishing stuff. And she like posts like, she's like, oh, I gotta be at work in like 3 hours. And I was like, that's crazy. That's not worth it. Don't, because that's not practicing self-care. So I would say, actually, I'm kind of a person that I like look at things that I'm like, what am I not inspired by? Like that, I always look at like, that is not how I want to be. So that is a source of inspiration for me, because I recognize like that's not how I want to live my life.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you can feel both ways, right? Like there's a social worker that I know that is the most amazing social worker, above and beyond anything I will ever be in my life. Like she's absolutely amazing. Yet I know she doesn't sleep and has like a lot of anxiety about not sleeping and that kind of thing. And so it's like I am inspired by what she does, but I know that I don't want that for myself, because I have to really have the boundary and like, take good care of myself, because my health is way more important. So it's like you can feel both ways. Because I wish I could do all those things, but I know like I don't have the time or the energy or the, I'm not willing to sacrifice my health for that. So it's good to find that balance of like, I missed this response. It says my parents and my mother-in-law. That's very sweet.
Yeah. My child to being a teenager is so different than what I remember myself as one. Exactly. My kids inspire me all the time, and how they look at the world. And I because our kids have grown up with the internet, they are so much more worldly and aware of like greater world than I ever was at that age.
It's true. There's so many things for them to worry about that I didn't worry about when I was young, and they're so resilient, and they, just everything, like the climate, like all the things. And my kids are, still pushing along and doing their thing. And, I think this is a good time for us to switch over to like our kids. We're going to talk a little bit about our kids. What is it for your kid right now? What have you noticed is their passion? And, this is kind of a between us parents. How do you feel about that passion? Like, if you're being super honest, how do you feel about your kid's current passion? I'll be honest, my freshman's video game addiction is his thing right now, and I don't feel good about it. How do you become a spark champion for something that you don't want your kids to do, because just like my dad showing up at my softball games when I wasn't going to be, in the Major League Baseball ever, like being there for me and being by my side and meeting me where I was at, regardless of like how he personally felt about it. I don't know. So it's definitely easier for me to engage with my kids if they were talking about wanting to learn about psychology or engineering or something that I think could be lucrative later on. It's hard for me to just pause with this is what they like right now. My mind kind of starts to worry about what are they going to do? Oh my gosh, God forbid this is what he wants to do forever, just play video games. How do I support that?
Yeah, my son has rediscovered, never let go of Legos, but he goes in like waves of like being super into it, and he's super into it right now, which is not a bad hobby. Legos are great, but they're very expensive, and so he always wants new sets, and I'm tired of him asking for that. And Legos are taking over my house. Like, they're everywhere. They are literally everywhere, and so that's annoying. But and then my daughter, she,
Go.
I honestly, I feel like her passion right now is like getting tattoos. She turned 18 and has gotten so many tattoos. And I'm like, well, your body. And so I'm like, I keep thinking like it's her own self-expression. It's fine. Good for her.
It's tough when it's not what like something you would hope for your kid. It's like I've been thinking a lot, and my kid one day hopefully never sees these videos, but one of my kids last semester failed 2 classes. So I actually didn't like tell him that I knew until yesterday, because I'm like, maybe there's still time the teachers can change it. Like, I don't know. They didn't. He has 2 Fs. And what I noticed since I found out is it is the only thing I talk to him about. I literally open my mouth and I'm like, so what's going on this semester? What do you do? Like, I'm so annoying. It is so important, and I'm very like passionate about my kids' education, and I want them to do well. But I think I have just gone a little overboard. I have not asked him in the last 2 days any questions about anything, what he wants, what he likes, what he wants for dinner. It's like literally all about school. And my kid has completely shut me out and shut down, and I get it. As a parent, I can set boundaries and I can have all these things, but I also have to remember that there's so many things that make our kids, right? Their passions, their dreams, their likes, their mental health, their environment, their friendships, their family, like all the things. And I am so hyper focused on his English and bio that I can't see past it. And it makes me feel bad because like even this morning, I saw when I woke him up this morning, the look he gave me just was like, get away from me. I'm so sick of you. Like I saw it in his face and I felt so bad. And I think what happens is what I'm saying to him without actually saying it is that his grades are the only thing that I care about. I don't care about anything else about him, which is not true. And I am, but I know that we tend to be, more focused on grades. And so I really am challenging myself for the next couple of days to, set the boundaries I need to set as far as like playing video games during the week and all that stuff, but also like to really like dig down and find some, compassion and interest in something else besides his grades. So I feel terrible. Like he hates me right now, and I get it. So,
I think it's a great place to actually introduce. I was thinking about this morning, that I have to start letting parents know when we get to February, we've kind of made this tradition. Every February we read a book and we do a book study. And so we're actually going to like reread a book that we read 2 years ago, The Gift of Failure, because it's very, very good. And I was just thinking about this before I turned on the Zoom this morning. I'm excited to reread it because, Yvonne, we're at different stages in parenting, like than we were 2 years. And so I want to see and so parents that have, that you were with us 2 years ago, that you read it then, I encourage you, reread it. Let's do this again, because I think we'll find different things.
Right when you mentioned the book, it literally made me want to cry, because when I was reading it the last time, it was thinking about my kid who was about to go to college and the things that I was worried about. And now I have a kid that I'm like worried to not get through high school. It's like a whole different failure. Yeah. And I think
it's a really powerful book, and it's really good. So I'm excited about it. I will, in my newsletter, I will put a link to the Amazon, and so that you guys can start thinking about getting it.
So hard. So I want to talk a little more about sparks. It's when we talk about what type of sparks kids have, it's usually a special quality or skill, something that, they're passionate about, something that comes from inside of us, something that we can express that gives us joy and energy. It says it's our very essence, the thing about us that is good and beautiful and useful to the world. Good and beautiful and useful to the world. So when I'm thinking about this kiddo of mine that's just, what about him is good and beautiful and useful to the world? Oh my God, I didn't think I was going to be emotional. This kid for me is the one who cares the most about me. He's the kid when I fall asleep on the couch that puts a blanket on me. He's my baby, and that is good and beautiful about him. Yes, he failed his classes and he probably didn't turn in any English assignments last semester. I don't know. But there's so many good and beautiful things about him that I overlook because I'm so focused on what he hasn't done or where he's underperforming. So for your kids, you know, what is good and beautiful about them and useful to the world? My baby.
Well, and I think I made this comment, I think when last semester when Mr. Tippett was presenting about the art department, and why I think like, you know, here we're in high school and like it's all about their education, their academics, and like obviously it's really important. And so this is, you know, my like principal hat giving advice to you, Yvonne. Like, remember that it's obviously you don't want them to fail their classes, but academic success in school is so much more than just grades. And so next week, the counselors are going to come and talk to parents about the scheduling process, because we're about to like gear into and, you know, start scheduling kids for their classes for next year, where kids are going to pick. And so that's why we did all of that with like talking about the electives, because this connects, I'm going to connect it all. I think that this is an opportunity to discover new passions. Like maybe your son's going to take photography and like be super into it. And like, that's something that he
loves the construction class.
So see, there you go. Like that is so, hey, yeah, English and bio is not his thing, but they're like, high school time to like branch out. And like, I think the worst thing that we can do as parents is like only focus on classes that are like going to look good for college. I think it's really because you're building, you know, you're building a human like that is going to be an adult very, very soon. And like, what interests and what passions are they going to have? Maybe it's not going to be their career, but maybe it will be. And that's great, but maybe it won't. And maybe it's just like me and cooking, something that they really, really enjoy.
Gosh, I feel so terrible because last semester he was like, I built the table and the legs were all the same size, and he was all excited. And I was like, but what about your bio homework? Like, I'm such a jerk.
Where is that table? Put it front and center in your
house. No, oh my gosh, I need to. You know, we're talking about Sparks and like having a Spark champion and having somebody that supports what you do. This is going to continue to make me feel worse. Kids who have Spark champions, who have adults that are supportive of them, have higher grades, have better attendance, are more likely to be socially competent, are more likely to be physically healthy, more likely to volunteer, are more likely to care about the environment, have a sense of purpose, less likely to experience depression, and are less likely to engage in acts of violence. Like, whoa. And they just need one person to be that to them, whatever that is that they're going through, whatever that is that they're passionate about. So as a parent, you know, look for signs of their spark. You know, hey, you seem to enjoy playing that video game. You seem to enjoy when we went grocery shopping and you were picking out new vegetables. You seem to enjoy hanging out with your friend or playing baseball. Ask open-ended questions and then just listen without judgment. You know, that's cool that you're interested in that. Tell me more about it. And then I would ask them, what do you think your spark is? Like, maybe explain to them what is a spark, and, you know, ask them, what is it for you? And figure out how to best support that. A couple things to remember: sparks can change over time. Young people can have multiple spark champions. The more champions they have, the more likely they're going to keep pursuing things. Someone to cheer them on. A skill is not automatically a spark. Maybe your kid is fantastic at math. That does not mean they're passionate about it. And then this last piece is just like how to be a spark champion. Affirm the spark, model the spark, provide opportunities to express it, run interference on any obstacles that get in the way, and show up for them. Whether it's a recital or whether it's they have a big video game thing that they're super excited about, maybe make them a snack and put it there while they're doing it, like whatever that is, be that for them because they really need it, and it might change and not necessarily going to be their career, even though it's in our instinct to worry about it. I think it's important to just be that person. So I feel like I'm learning more through this than I'm teaching right now. So that's what I got for us.
All right. Well, hopefully parents, you also learned something from this. But Yvonne, that's why we do this topic every year, because you
know.
learn something new.
Gosh, what's gonna happen next year?
So thank you, parents. Like I said, counselors are going to be here next week to talk about the practicalities of scheduling for classes and how that all works. So I will see you then. Have a great week, everybody. Stay dry, because
Yeah.
never stop raining. All right. Bye, everybody.